He smirked at me in front of the whole office, joking that I was too old to keep up. What he didn't realize was that the floor he stood on, the walls around him, and the roof over his head already belonged to me. Tell me, have you ever let someone underestimate you, only to reveal you were holding the real power all along? Share it in the comments. I'd love to know. Now let's get straight into the story. I had worked at the company for over 20 years, long before my current boss, Daniel, ever set foot in the office. Back then, we didn't have sleek computers and fancy software. Everything was done by hand, by patience, and by people who cared about the work. I carried this company through recessions, late nights, and endless deadlines, but Daniel never cared about history. To him, only youth mattered. He praised the 20-somethings who barely knew the job but dressed sharp and spoke fast. He brushed off those of us with gray hair as if we were relics, reminders of a past he wanted to forget. Still, I did my work quietly, steadily. I trained new hires, fixed mistakes no one else caught, and kept projects moving when Daniel was too busy posturing in meetings. I didn't need applause. I just wanted respect. That morning, however, he crossed a line. We were in a team meeting, everyone gathered around the table. I had just finished presenting a detailed report, numbers checked, predictions laid out, a plan to save the company money. When I passed the folder to Daniel, he didn't even look at it. Instead, he chuckled and said loudly, "Well, I guess experience shows, but maybe you're just too old to keep up with where this industry is going." The room went silent for a beat. Then a few of the younger employees gave nervous laughs, glancing at me and then back at him. My cheeks burned, not from shame, but from anger. Too old? After everything I had built here? After all the times I had covered for his mistakes? Kept this place from falling apart? I sat quietly, refusing to let him see the fury boiling inside me. I folded my hands, gave a small smile, and simply said, "We'll see, Daniel. We'll see." He smirked, clearly thinking he had won the moment. To him, I was just another older employee clinging to relevance, someone easy to mock in front of a crowd. What Daniel didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the office he strutted around in, the building he acted like he owned, had a name on the deed. Mine. And soon he was going to find out just how irrelevant I really was. The funny thing about Daniel was that he strutted through the office as if the walls themselves bowed to him. He loved reminding us that without his leadership, the place wouldn't stand a chance. I never bothered to correct him, let him have his illusions, because the truth was, years ago, when this company nearly folded during a downturn, the owner at the time had needed investors. I believed in the place, so I cashed out a retirement account and bought into the building itself. When that owner retired, he sold me his shares in the property. Not the company, just the real estate. The land, the bricks, the very office Daniel thought he ruled. So while he mocked me in meetings, I went home each night knowing the rent checks his department signed went directly into my account. Every month, like clockwork, the company wired thousands to my name, and he had no idea. I kept the papers locked in a drawer at home, inside a fireproof box. Sometimes on the hardest days, I would pull them out, run my fingers over the embossed seal, and remind myself who really had power. Not Daniel with his smug grins and flashy suits. Me, the woman he thought was too old for love, too old for relevance, too old for work. The irony made me smile sometimes. He strutted through my halls, barked orders in my conference rooms, dismissed me in my building, but I didn't want revenge born of pettiness. No, I wanted him to learn, to understand that respect should never be tied to age or looks or noise. Respect belongs to the ones who quietly carry the load, even when no one's watching. So I waited, patiently, quietly, because timing is everything, and sure enough, the opportunity came. Daniel, in his usual bravado, had been planning a grand event, A client dinner in the very same office building. He bragged about it for weeks, inviting executives, making speeches about his company's success. He wanted applause, recognition, a spotlight big enough to drown everyone else out. I smiled politely when he handed me tasks for the event, never letting him see the small thrill building in my chest, because I knew that night would be the perfect moment. The papers were ready, the deed was copied, the proof was tucked neatly into an envelope waiting in my bag. He thought he owned the stage, but soon he would realize the stage itself belonged to me. The night of the client dinner, the office looked like something out of a glossy magazine. Tables lined with white linens, crystal glasses gleaming under the lights, trays of appetizers passing from hand to hand. Daniel strutted around like a king hosting a royal banquet. "Make sure the guests see the new branding," he barked at one employee. "And keep the champagne flowing. This night is going to put us on the map." I stayed near the edges of the room, watching him work the crowd. He laughed too loudly, shook hands too firmly, bragged too freely. Every sentence seemed to start with, "I built this," or "My leadership made that possible." The younger employees nodded eagerly, hanging on every word. A few clients even clapped when he launched into an impromptu speech. "This company," he boomed, "is more than an office. It's a symbol of innovation, youth, and fresh ideas. And it all happens right here, under my roof." I nearly laughed out loud. His roof? I slipped my hand into my bag, feeling the weight of the envelope. The time had come. When he finally paused for breath, I stepped forward. "Daniel," I said calmly, my voice carrying just enough to quiet the chatter around us. "You've spoken a lot tonight about leadership and roofs. Perhaps it's time the guests know who really owns the one above their heads." The room fell silent. Dozens of eyes turned toward me. Daniel blinked, caught off guard, then smirked. "Oh, come on, don't be shy. This is no time for jokes." But I didn't smile. I reached into the envelope and pulled out the deed, its embossed seal catching the light. "This isn't a joke. This building, the walls, the floors, the roof you brag about, it belongs to me. My name is on the deed. So when you boast about this being your stage, remember, you're just a tenant." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Clients leaned closer, craning to see the papers. A few employees covered their mouths in shock. Daniel's face turned crimson. That's not possible," he stammered, reaching for the documents, but I pulled them back, holding them steady for everyone else to see. "It is possible," I replied firmly. "And it's true. While you mocked me for being too old to keep up, you were walking through halls that my sacrifice and foresight secured. So maybe next time, think twice before you dismiss someone whose shoes you're not fit to fill." The silence was deafening. Then slowly a murmur of respect began to ripple through the room. Not for Daniel, but for me. For the first time in years, I wasn't just the woman in the corner doing the quiet work. I was the one holding the ground beneath their feet. For a moment, no one moved. The deed in my hands gleamed under the bright lights, proof that every smug word Daniel had spoken was nothing but hot air. Finally, one of the clients broke the silence. "Wait, so you own this building?" I nodded calmly. "Yes, I've owned it for years." The ripple of surprise turned into a wave of whispers. Employees who had been snickering at Daniel's age jokes now exchanged wide-eyed glances. The same people who had overlooked me every day were suddenly looking at me like they were seeing me for the first time. Daniel's smirk was gone. His face was blotchy, his jaw tight. He stammered, "She's exaggerating. This isn't... She's just trying to..." I cut him off, my voice steady. "Daniel, the rent your department pays every month goes directly into my account. You can deny my age, my experience, my value, but you can't deny the paperwork." Gasps again, and this time a few people actually chuckled, not at me, but at him. A junior employee whispered too loudly, "Guess we know who really keeps the lights on." The tension in Daniel's posture collapsed. He fiddled with his cufflinks, cleared his throat, tried to recover. Well, I suppose credit should go where it's due. She's been here a long time after all. But it was too late. Everyone had seen it. The arrogance stripped away. The truth laid bare. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I simply tucked the papers back into my envelope and smiled faintly. Respect, I said, turning to the crowd, isn't about age, it's about contribution, and some of us have been contributing quietly for longer than most of you have been alive. The clients began to clap, softly at first, then louder, until the sound filled the room. Not for Daniel's speech, for mine. I stepped back, letting the moment sink in, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not just vindication, but visibility. I wasn't the quiet, forgotten employee anymore. I was the foundation, literally, of the place they all worked. And judging by Daniel's pale face, he finally understood that mocking me had been the biggest mistake of his career. The next morning, the office was a different place. People who had walked past my desk without a glance now stopped to greet me. Some even apologized outright. "Mrs. Harris," one young analyst said, nervously adjusting his tie. "I had no idea. Thank you for everything you've done for this place." I smiled kindly but kept my tone measured. Respect isn't about knowing titles or deeds. It's about seeing the value in people every day. Don't forget that. Word had spread quickly after the dinner. Clients called, not to praise Daniel's showmanship, but to compliment me on my composure. A few even hinted they trusted the company more, knowing it stood under my ownership. As for Daniel, he couldn't look me in the eye. In the Monday meeting, he spoke with unusual restraint, stumbling over his words, avoiding any comment about youth or keeping up. The smirk was gone. The arrogance had cracked. I didn't humiliate him further. I didn't need to. The truth had already done the work. For years, I had felt invisible in my own workplace, treated as if my years of experience were a burden rather than a strength. And in one evening, the balance shifted, not because I shouted, not because I demanded attention, but because I quietly carried the truth until the right moment arrived. At lunch, a colleague I had mentored years ago sat across from me. "You know," she said softly, "seeing you stand up like that, it gave me hope. I've been worried about getting older here, about being pushed aside, but you showed us all that age doesn't erase worth." Her words touched me more than the applause of the night before. When I went home, I pulled out the deed again, laying it flat on the table. I stared at my name embossed across the page, not with pride in owning a building, but with pride in what it symbolized: years of sacrifice, foresight, and resilience. I realized then that Daniel hadn't just mocked me. He had underestimated me. And in doing so, he had underestimated every person who carries wisdom, history, and strength written in the lines of their face. The building wasn't just mine in name, it was mine in spirit, and now everyone knew it. In the end, my boss thought mocking my age would make me small. Instead, it revealed just how little he understood. Age doesn't make us weaker, it makes us wiser, stronger, more prepared than those who only chase appearances. That night, the truth came out. The building he bragged about working in was mine. But more importantly, I reclaimed something I'd been denied for years: respect. To everyone listening, remember this: don't ever let anyone tell you that you're too old to matter. Experience is power, and sometimes the quietest people in the room are the ones holding it all together. Thank you for being here with me on Elder Words. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of resilience and quiet triumphs.